Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the workshop on coaching for equity in CS, a coaching model for building capacity around equitable teaching practices. My name is Andrea Williams. I am the library director at Merritt College Library in Oakland, and today I am proud to present our guest speakers. We have Pauline Lake, Andrea Wilson-Vazquez, and Brad Haugen. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the description of their workshop. Coaching for Equity in Computer Science is a new initiative focused on studying the impact of coaching on teachers in CS. 2 coaching programs have been created as part of this project. One nationally, virtually, through the National Center for CS Education at the College of St. Scholastica, and one locally in Minnesota through Code Savvy. The coaching model used is designed around the CSTA Standards for CS teachers and focuses specifically on providing ongoing support for HSCS teachers to build their capacity around implementing equitable teaching practices. Coaches are trained on what coaching is, how to be a coach, and how to support teachers in implementing strategies that support learners historically underrepresented in CS. Some strategies include universal design for learning and creating welcoming environments. This workshop today aims to share details about the project, how to get involved, in addition to resources and strategies that can be brought back to the in-person and online classroom right away. Today, you will participate in an interactive coaching scenario and complete a hands-on activity aimed at understanding how to support all students in learning. So I want to welcome our presenters and thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, for that lovely introduction, and welcome everyone to our session. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Thumbs up that everybody can see my screen. Okay, perfect. Again, welcome. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of how we're going to spend the next 45 minutes, a little less than that. So we have a little welcome and introduction section here, so you can get to know us and we can get to know who's in the room as well and kind of set the tone for our session. Then we're going to do a little bit of background sharing on what our coaching model is that is used in the Coaching for Equity in CS project. And then we'll give you most of the time in the session here to practice a coaching scenario where you will do some role playing, and it should be fun. And we'll close with some Q&A and sharing of resources, as Andrea mentioned, and how to get involved as well. So just to set the tone here for why we're here, I think we all have a shared common goal of educational equity. We wanted to share this quote by Elena Aguilar in the National Equity Project. So educational equity means that each child receives what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential and thrive academically, socially, and emotionally. So we hope that what we're doing here today is one way to work toward that goal, and we are happy to have you here with us and be a part of this great cause. So our objectives for this session, we are going to take a look at examining some issues of equity, specifically in the field of computer science education, but if you are from STEM backgrounds, you may realize that there's some similarities there as well. And these are going to be particularly looking at how there's inequities across the diverse student populations being represented in computer science education and STEM fields. We'll also look at understanding our model of coaching, which is an equity-based coaching model for teaching computer science. So today we're going to focus on some practices that we've been implementing, such as increasing access, which is also happening through our national coaching program. We hope that by providing this national virtual coaching program from the National Center for Computer Science Education, that we are providing more access to coaching because it is virtual and allowing more teachers and educators to participate. We also are looking to support students, which is focused on supporting 3 focal student populations, which you'll hear a little bit more about later in our session. We're applying UDL, Universal Design for Learning principles, and working to increase diversity and inclusion. So who are we? So I'm going to make sure we get a chance to introduce ourselves as presenters. But while we're doing that, we would love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. And we actually would like to have you also share what coaching means to you. So we've been using this word and saying it, but we would love to know what does it mean to you? What do you think of when you hear the word coaching? So feel free to put into the chat who you are, where you're located, and what coaching means to you as we introduce ourselves. So first, I am Pauline Lake. I am one of the co-PIs for the Coaching for Equity and CS National Science Foundation project. I currently serve as the Professional Learning Manager for the National Center for Computer Science Education, which is housed at the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth, Minnesota. My background is in computer science and education, but I also have a master's in public policy with a focus on computer science education policy. And I work primarily with the center's coaching program. So I help with supporting our coaches that are coaching virtually and nationally, and also helping with coordinating who the coachees are for the national program. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Andrea.
Thanks, Pauline. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Andrea Wilson-Vazquez. I'm also one of the co-PIs for the Coaching for Equity and Computer Science project. I am just starting a new job. So I have my new title there. I'm the Deputy Director for the ESEP Alliance. That's the Expanding Computing Education Pathways Alliance. It's a national project that is also NSF funded and is kind of housed out of the University of Texas at Austin, but I am physically located in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm just coming from Code Savvy. And so that's kind of how my involvement in this project started, and I'm able to continue on, which is great. My background is actually in education. I have my teaching license as a K-12 teacher of English learners and came to computer science by way of co-teaching with computer science teachers and math teachers, and found my way then into getting some specializations in computer science and my master's in English as a second language instruction. So kind of coming at computer science from a little bit of a different lens, but really with a real passion for equitable and inclusive computer science instruction. I'm a current Computer Science Teachers Association Equity Fellow. And so also I'm working on some projects through that lens on the national level and just trying to connect with others who are really passionate about using equitable teaching practices in computer science. So with that, I'll pass it to our other colleague, Brad Haugen.
Folks, my name is Brad Haugen. I'm kind of unique to this program as I am also a coach in the project, but I'm also on the administrative team, our core team. So it's pretty cool to have both perspectives and the work that we do and being able to help on both sides. It's pretty awesome. So I trained as a math teacher and the last few years kind of dabbled into computer science a little bit. And, once I reached out, actually, both of my colleagues here I've worked with in past projects, and they said, "Hey, we got this cool thing going on. Why don't you jump on board?" And they hook, line, and sinker. So I'm in and just excited to be doing the work that we are. And like I said, just a trained math teacher that finally got into the computer science realm and have enjoyed it ever since. So let's get going. I'll pass it back to Pauline.
Thanks, Andrea and Brad. And just looking at the chat here, I see some introductions coming in. So again, welcome to everyone that's here. And some of the things that I see standing out and maybe being repeated about what coaching is and what it means to you. I see mentoring, supporting one another, providing feedback to help someone improve their practice. Yes. Support, guidance, support, and mentoring. And I think guiding, I saw again. So seeing support and guidance coming up multiple times. So I think we have sort of some idea of what coaching is, which puts us right on track to being able to go into our workshop today. I do want to just share and acknowledge Elaine Aguilar's work I mentioned earlier. And she has a book called Coaching for Equity, and explains coaching as being centered around the 6 coach dispositions that are on the screen. So compassion, curiosity, courage, trust in process, humility and mutuality, learner orientation. So keep in mind these coach dispositions, and I think we can make sure the link is in the chat to make sure you have a chance to check out the book if you would like. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Andrea, who is going to help us with understanding what is coaching a little bit more and our coaching model.
Thanks, Pauline. Yeah, definitely check out that book. It's one that's been really informative in our practice as we've been designing and now implementing this project. And I'll also say, I didn't mention this in my introduction, but throughout the time, I was a formal educator for about 13 years, and my last 3 years were as a peer coach or an instructional coach in my school district. That was the Coaching for Equity book by Elaine Aguilar was really informative in our coaching model within our school district. So I'd be curious to know if any of you all have experience either as a coach or with a coach in your kind of educational careers. And if there have been resources that have been helpful, definitely drop those in the chat. We appreciate kind of adding to our repertoire. So our coaching model, as Pauline mentioned, is definitely based on that Coaching for Equity book. We're really interested in building on all of the things that you all mentioned in the chat, as well as kind of this idea or a nod towards transformational coaching. So we want to take instructional coaching. We want to be, a peer support for the teachers that we're working with. We want to really work with them to set goals that feel very relevant to their practice. And we want to help them to identify strategies for inclusive practice that they can weave into their computer science classes. So with that in mind, I want to just take a couple minutes to share with you a few visuals. So we're going to start at the top left. So how this project began is we really identified a need, and this has been reflected, continuously reflected in some of the research that the Kippur Center and the Computer Science Teachers Association have done recently in gathering information and input from computer science teachers across the United States, is that there's a continuous need to support teachers to help gain more confidence in implementing inclusive strategies in their computer science classrooms. And so we have done a lot of research around the best ways to support teachers, and Digital Promise has a really interesting study that identifies coaching as one of the most effective ways to help educators transfer what they learn in professional development into practice in their classrooms. It's something like 99% effective, according to that study. So we thought, let's implement a high quality computer science coaching program that's really focused in on these equitable teaching practices and boosting educator confidence with those, with the hope that our outcome would be an increased ability to implement those equitable teaching practices in the computer science classroom. And the impact would be that their students are really able to engage and learn and feel welcome and accepted in their classroom spaces. Kind of the transformational coaching piece that I'll mention is that we acknowledge that not all barriers to computer science or STEM are classroom based. Many school-wide policies, district-wide policies, statewide policies also impact the ability for students to access or participate in computer science, or educators' ability to be trained to teach computer science. And so the transformational piece is that we're also working with our coachees to look at some of those higher level barriers that might exist and how they might take some steps towards addressing those. Just on the right side, you can see a graphic that sort of introduces how our project is structured. So at the top, we have kind of our core team. We are a research practitioner partnership. So we've got research happening about the ways that we are doing this work. And then we are working directly with our coaches and coachees. We should have introduced a little vocabulary maybe as we were talking. So coaches are the folks that are working directly with teachers, and the classroom teachers we call coachees in our project. So we have kind of our core team that's leading and guiding this work. That's Pauline, Brad, and I. We also have Jen Rosado from the College of St. Scholastica and the National Center for CS Ed, Megan Diger, who is our evaluator. And then we have a research team from CS Ed Research, who's just joined our team. So we're excited about that. Then we work directly with coaches. We meet with them on a monthly basis to provide them with support and ongoing professional development. Because if you've ever been a coach, you know that you face all sorts of new and different situations. We just want our coaches to feel like they have a community to come back to, and like we are constantly helping them to learn and hone their craft as well, especially with that equity lens. And our coaches are then working directly with 2 teachers each, and working through a coaching cycle with each of those teachers. And then the teachers are, of course, implementing into their teaching practice. Pauline mentioned that this is a National Science Foundation funded grant. And as a part of that work, the NSF kind of requirement is that each project identifies some target student populations. And in our grant in particular, we're focused in on students who receive special education services and engaging those students in our work, emerging multilingual students, which is another term for students receiving EL services or English learners, and then female and non-binary students. So as we're thinking about some of those equitable teaching practices, we're really leaning in towards strategies that have been proven to work with each of those target populations. Just a few other details about each of our programs. So we mentioned that we have kind of this umbrella project, which is establishing these coaching networks for high school computer science teachers. And then we have a Minnesota local coaching program that's been established through the nonprofit Code Savvy. And that is, again, encapsulating high school computer science teachers. Although we have opened it up so that it's not just advanced placement computer science teachers, we're working with teachers who are teaching any computer science in their high school class. So we are working with some teachers we have an EL teacher that we're working with. We have math teachers we're working with. We have some teachers who are teaching advanced placement. And we have others who are kind of establishing their own standalone computer science class, like an intro to computer science. So those teachers are all able to participate on the Minnesota side, and then they are matched up with Minnesota-based coaches so that they're able to have a mix of in-person and remote coaching happening. The goal is that we have 12 coaches and 24 teachers for our next round. So that will be for our second year. So building on this first year where we've had 6 coaches and 12 teachers. The national side, through the National Center for Computer Science Ed, is again looking at high school teachers. They are focused in, however, just on advanced placement for AP Computer Science Principles and Computer Science A, because those are programs that the National Center has worked really closely with, and they are open to anybody in the United States. And they do remote coaching only. So they use a product called a Swivel. Now they've just shifted their name, but essentially a tool that helps to capture video of some activities that are happening in the classroom with really targeted abilities to listen in through various different microphones and drop points. We're recruiting right now for year 2 coaches and coachees. So as you're hearing more about our project, if any of this sounds interesting, we encourage you to check out more information. And I can drop a link to our info site in the chat as well. All right, so we wanted to just provide you with one helpful resource that we have really drawn on. I know we mentioned Coaching for Equity, the book by Elena Aguilar. We've also really drawn on the Computer Science Teachers Association coaching toolkit. They have a variety of different resources and really helpful kind of thinking points as you're establishing a coaching program. And one that we have drawn on heavily is this coaching cycle, where when our coaches are working with their coachees, they're starting off often with kind of a reflection meeting or kind of a goal setting meeting to get a sense for where the teacher would like to go, which target population they would like to focus in on this time around, and what their specific lesson might be that they want to target. Then they're working together with their coach to plan out how they're going to incorporate a strategy or more than one strategy, equitable teaching strategy, into that lesson. And then they implement. And that's where that video might come in if it's a remote coaching situation, or the coach might be invited into the classroom to observe how the implementation happens. That's where data collection happens. That's been mutually agreed upon by the coach and the teacher. And then there's a final reflecting phase where they go over that data and how the implementation phase went. It's definitely not seen as like a punitive thing when there's critical feedback to give. It's mutually agreed upon goals, and so it's all done with kind of the teacher's strengths and growth in mind, and with an eye towards, again, that goal of ensuring equitable access and participation for students. So that coaching cycle is kind of helps to provide the frame for how our coaches and coachees interact. And what we want to do with this next part of our session, now that you have kind of some baseline knowledge, is we want to invite you into that process. So what we do with our coaches on a monthly basis is we gather, we kind of connect around how things are going, and then we provide some just-in-time PD, knowing that we are all on at different places in our personal equity journeys and in our understanding of how best to engage and support our target student populations. We focus in on different aspects of those topics for each month. But this just-in-time PD that we're going to look at today together is specifically related to students who are receiving special education services. So we're going to introduce you to a tool that we shared with our coaches after giving some context about students with disabilities. So as we lead off, a little bit of context. So students with disabilities make up about 15% of students in public schools, and an additional 1.5% to almost 2.5% are receiving 504 support, so might not be specifically qualified for special education services, but do have some accommodations that they receive in the classroom. And in order to just kind of set the stage, we want to invite you all to adapt some educator mindsets, just things that we want to agree to as we think about how we engage with students who are students with disabilities in our classes. We want to agree that learner variability is the norm and should be embraced. No two students are the same. We want to meet our students where they're at. All learners, including those with disabilities, deserve to be included in computer science and STEM more broadly, and that we are not going to blame a lack of learning and engagement on students. We're instead going to be really solution focused, and we're going to think about how we can approach meeting our students where they're at. So with those in mind, we just want to acknowledge as well that there are different moments in time where students might be able to engage with different content in different ways, and that our learning profiles change over time. Sometimes we might be tired or stressed or have different ways that we're accessing prior knowledge. And so to just keep our mindset as educators nimble and adaptable, as well as we think about how we engage learners of varying different learner profiles. And so the tool that we most often use when we're talking with our coaches about engaging students with disabilities, and really all students more broadly, is Universal Design for Learning. I want to share a link to UDL is the short name for it, the UDL table. This is something that just kind of compiles some of the UDL strategies, Universal Design for Learning strategies, in one place. So I just dropped a link in the chat, and I want to just encourage you to take a look at the engagement category. And I'm just going to invite in the chat, invite you to name one strategy from that engagement category that stands out to you. And it can be from any of those 3 pages. So the engagement, multiple means of engagement category is the one on the far left. And feel free to scroll through to the different pages and just in the chat, name one that stands out to you. Might be one you're familiar with or intrigued by.
I'll go.
Thanks.
Provide and support. No, I'm sorry, that's not the one. Teach and encourage peer collaboration by sharing products.
Yeah, thanks so much. Absolutely. Yeah. So thinking about kind of how we structure that, right? Encouraging that peer collaboration by sharing those end products or by being able to really define how those roles play out as the products are developed. Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I see Laura in the chat, communicate clear expectations. Yeah, for competing task collaboration and help seeking. Absolutely. So really providing some routines, right? How does this work? What is expected? How do we engage together? Give student choices, right? Absolutely. Provide options for sustaining effort and persistence. Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about how students could maybe make projects relevant to themselves. Yeah, thanks, Bob, for adding that. Appreciate that. Yep, another one in the chat here. Yep, giving students choices. Absolutely, super important. So this is, again, just one tool that we have covered with our coaches. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at a coaching scenario. And I invite you to keep that tab open if you still have it with that table, because we're going to take a look at this coaching scenario and think about what is one of those strategies or more than one from the Universal Design for Learning approach that might be of help, of support to a teacher in this situation, in the student as well. So I'll pass it to Brad to talk to us a little bit about this coaching scenario and how that's going to work.
Thanks, Andrea. All right, time to have some fun, but we're also going to need some volunteers coming up. So for our coaching scenario today, we've chosen a little fun play. We did similar things with our coaches in our academic year PD, and it's funny how the most experienced teachers make the best students in our role play. So keep that in mind as we're asking for volunteers. Today, what we're looking to do is just do a simple impromptu role play. Some of you may have heard called a riff. So I always think of that as the guitar riff, where you just kind of go and just play and keep playing your tune to your abilities. And we want you to do the same thing with these roles today. So we're going to act out our scenario and take time at the end to kind of reflect on the outcomes. And we're going to give you that scenario here in a moment. So we need a volunteer for a student. All we're going to ask you to do is take our prompt and kind of think of a thought, feeling, or an action and just act that out. Then we need a role of the coachee, which is the classroom teacher in this case. You're going to respond to that student's thought, feeling, or action in the moment. So, just like when you're in the heat of the battle in the classroom, what's that knee-jerk reaction going to be? We just want you to play it out. Then the second part of that is you're going to relay that scenario to the coach. So the coach's job, so this is, the mentor, the coach of the teacher. So then you're going to take that information and then try to refer back to that UDL table with the coachee as you're talking with them. What are some things that you can see to bring to light to help them to improve their pedagogy and their use of that in the classroom scenarios. So everybody else is kind of going to take on the role of observer. So we're kind of going to do this fishbowl style. So in the chat, if there's anybody who's interested in doing any of those roles, please just throw in there. I can be the student, I can be the coachee, or you can be the coach. So take a moment to get brave and be a part of our scenario here. All right, Bob's going to be the student. Also got to throw a shout out to Bob because Bob posted earlier part of coaching is being the cheerleader. And I know Pauline made mention of it in the chat, but that's been our theme song for us since day one of the project. Anybody interested in being the coachee or the coach?
Bob says he'll play the student.
Excellent.
Took the easy part.
Like I said, the most experienced teachers make the best students for these role play.
Pretty early in the morning for role play, but you guys are brave.
Yeah. Anybody else want to volunteer for one of those spots? Probably the hardest one is the coach, and I'm gonna see if I can volunteer Andrea to be the coach in this situation. Will you pick up that role for us, Andrea?
Yep, happy to do it.
Perfect. Anybody want to be the coachee, the teacher that, again, all you have to do is react to what Bob is going to play out. And again, there's no judgment on this. This is, again, heat of the battle, knee-jerk reactions, you know, kind of going back on what you've been trained and how to respond. And again, there's no right or wrong answers as we go through this. Anybody interested? All right. Thank you, Andrea, for volunteering for this.
That
All
was
right. So
me. That
our
was
goal.
my co-host.
Oh,
That's Kevin.
excellent.
That's me.
Oh, that's Kevin. Perfect. Thanks, Kevin. All right. So our goal. Coaches are going to guide their coachees to recognize a practical UDL strategy to use to increase our equitable engagement and participation in the classroom. Drum roll, please. Here's our scenario. So we'll give Bob a little time here to think about what he wants to do. But we have students that are working on a partner project in their STEM class, but Bob, as student A, seems to be disengaging. Okay, so you kind of have some freedom there, Bob, to think of how you want to play that out. So Kevin, we're just going to have you wait to see what Bob does. If you want to have a little verbal interaction, you know, you can definitely do that as well. And then again, the follow-up to that, we'll have Kevin have a little conversation with Andrea as the coach. So whenever you're ready, Bob, the stage is yours.
Okay, well, I'll add a little context. I would assume in this situation that a teacher would reach out to me because he's hearing I'm disengaging in some way. Because if I'm disengaging, I'm probably not reaching out to him. So let's assume we're in that conversation. I would say, hey, teach, I'm sorry, I know I'm falling behind on this, and I don't know what my partner's told you, but it's been really uncomfortable. He has a particular way he wants to do this project, and it doesn't resonate with my wishes and skills. You know, he's having me do all the writing. It feels like I'm doing most of the work or being asked to, and feels like he's kind of coasting, and I'm actually bummed because this is a lot of points, and I might even drop this class before I get a bad grade.
Well, Bob, I'm sorry to hear that you're having that experience, and I'd like to say that I'm here to help. So my goal is to see if we can't find ways that you and your teammate can work together on this. One of my goals for this class is to provide multiple ways for people to succeed. And so we might need to have a conversation with your teammate that there's more than one way to reach an outcome. 2 + 2 = 4, and so does 3 + 1, right? So when we get a chance, let's schedule something for you and your classmate that you're talking about so that we can just have a heart-to-heart about how we can move forward, because I don't want you to drop out. I know when you said in the opening discussion forum that your goals for reaching your degree include success in this class. I want to help you reach that goal, and I don't want to let this particular circumstance get in the way. So send me an email with days and times that you're available throughout the week, and then I'll work to coordinate with you and your teammate to set something up. How's that sound?
It sounds good. And I'd like to throw out the idea that maybe I get a new partner, or could I work alone?
Well, let's explore all of that. Once we've had that conversation, if it looks like you're not able to work together, then we can explore that option. But I want you to be prepared for the workforce, and you don't always get to choose new partners if you're in a situation where your coworkers aren't behaving in the way that you would like, but we still need to find ways to manage that. And I want to set you up with the skills to succeed in this field.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure does.
All right, great. Well, thanks. And I'm going to actually check in with my coach to see if there's anything else I can do, but hop on that email and we'll set something up.
Right, will do.
Ring, ring. Hey, coach.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
It's going okay, but I had a challenging situation happen today. And so I wanted to run it by you and see if there's anything else I could do.
Yeah. Tell me about it. What's going on?
Well, I reached out to a student. He's really been working hard in my class, but he started disengaging. And I found out today during our conversation, he's done so because he feels like he's doing a lot of the work in our team projects. He feels like his teammate is possibly fixed on a specific way of approaching this particular activity. And he's, he expressed that he's ready to drop out of the class. He doesn't feel like he has many options. So, to start, I tried to assure him that I'm here to support him in his success as a student and also moving on to the profession. And I also set up a schedule with him and his teammates so that we can have a conversation. He threw out there that he wanted to possibly do the project on his own, or maybe even jump onto another team. And I said, let's have that conversation first, because I feel like he may run into situations like this in the workforce. And I wanted him to be prepared to navigate those waters, but I'm sure I'm missing something. So if there's any advice that you have or feedback, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, awesome. Pause real quick. I want to just invite anybody who would like to kind of keep that, watch out Hollywood, I love it, to keep our UDL strategies in mind, and feel free to drop any in the chat that are coming to your mind. So I will unpause and start by validating, Kevin, the work that you are doing with your student. It sounds like, you are recognizing your student for really doing some problem solving and some reflection. That's a strategy we've talked about. You're reminding them of kind of some goals around this program and what their personal goals are, as well as like your goals, as you mentioned, for helping prepare them for the workforce. And that reality is you don't always get to choose who you work with. Sounds like you provided support to help keep your student engaged, which is a strategy we've talked about. And something that I'm curious about is how clearly defined are the roles that you have laid out for this project? And is there maybe an opportunity to more clearly define what the roles could be in order to make sure that each partner can engage in a way that feels meaningful to them?
Yeah, I think even though I've defined roles, I've left it up to the teams to decide who's going to play which role. And maybe I need to be firmer about making sure that those roles get taken up so that people don't all feel like they're playing the same role, or maybe one role gets left out of the equation. So that sounds like definitely an area I can strengthen.
Yeah, that could be a helpful strategy. And there might be situations too where other teams, maybe who haven't voiced this, could be experiencing similar pitfalls, right? And that's just a part of kind of that communicating those clear expectations and following up, especially in terms of the collaboration piece, which can be a struggle. We've all been on those group projects, right, that just kind of fall apart. So appreciate the foundation that you've set here, and encourage maybe trying that out with defining some clear roles. And then, it sounds like you've already set a time to check back in with your students. So I'd love to follow up with you again and see if maybe engaging those two students in identifying what those roles are and how they could play them, and if they feel they can move forward together, or kind of how to navigate those next steps.
That sounds great. I'm going to be speaking with them later this week, so I'll just ping you right after that to make sure that we can close the loop, but also get any additional feedback. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak.
Yeah, of course. And I can also just take a look at my resources and see if there are other ways that other teams have defined some of those roles and pass those along your way, just as an additional resource that you could even share with students. Just nice always to have kind of a couple different approaches that see what resonates.
That sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Bob. And scene.
And scene.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
Virtual
amazing.
round of applause.
Yeah, that was amazing. You really knocked that out of the park, all right. I love to see how there was a circular pattern to the assistance that was provided. We don't see that a lot. And follow through.
Yeah, that's definitely takes practice and intentionality. And I mean, Kevin was, an optimal coachee with, really having thought through all of these things before, clearly. But that kind of a process where, you start with the validation, in coaching, we encourage a lot of leading with questioning. I'm trying to hold back my assumptions about what might be happening. I'm not going to say, well, you clearly need to add some more definition to your roles, because I don't know, I'm not there, right? So, asking, tell me a little bit more about how you've defined the roles, or, hey, can we take a look at how you set up this kind of partner share in this project? Like, let's look at that together, because we are peers here, right? There's no power differential. I'm really there to support Kevin and his students, right, in order to be as successful as possible. And then definitely there's always that follow-up. How can I continue to support you? What can I pass your way that can really, put you at ease in this next part? So for sure. Yeah, Dory, I see your comment in the chat there. I wish this was my first time dealing with this issue. For sure. It's so relatable. Yep. Yeah, the relationship piece, Pauline, you're exactly right, is so important. And we spend a lot of time in the beginning of our coaching cycle, at the beginning of the school year, encouraging our coaches to build those relationships with coachees. And sometimes that's, let's do some casual Zoom calls. Let's, hop on a regular phone call instead of a Zoom call, like whatever works best for them to really build that relationship. But that it does take trust, right? Because it's a vulnerable process, but always kind of with that eye towards, we always just want to do the best we can for our students. All right, I'll pass it back to Brad, I think, who's going to take us to our final steps.
Yep, we're going to jump into our wrap up here. Thanks again, Kevin and Bob. I don't know if Bob's back yet, but that was awesome. And this is what we find every time in our coaches meeting. If we can get the teachers working together and the coaches working, it's amazing the conversations we're able to have. And I'm bummed that we can't have more of the observers talk about things that they saw. But keep it in mind, watch the recording again, and kind of do that self-reflection. So I'm going to quickly pass it on to Pauline to wrap us up.
Thanks. And I would just echo again, thank you to Bob and Kevin and Andrea. That was great. So just to wrap up here, we have to see a little bit here. I talk a little bit about the inequities that are happening in computer science education across diverse student populations, but also taking time to look at how this model of equity-based coaching can help us with addressing those, and also helping us to learn how to implement strategies that will support all students, such as UDL, Universal Design for Learning. So we want to share here on the right, there are 2 books, and we're going to put the links in the chat. So 2 books we've used so far for the project are Coaching for Equity by Elena Aguilar, which we mentioned earlier. We've also been using the Power On book, which has been centered around various student perspectives as they are experiencing computer science with their schools and teachers. So we also want to take a moment to say, if you would like to get involved with our project, we are currently recruiting 12 coaches and 24 coachees per program. We have 2 programs. If you're interested in coaching, you can email Brad or myself by May 5th. We have a quick turnaround time for that as we gear up to hire for the summer and get started with the next year. Coachees, if you know any high school teachers that are interested, can apply by July 31st by going to our website and filling out the brief Google form application. And we will review applications on a rolling basis, and those who are accepted get stipends, and they also receive free coaching. So thank you all for joining us today for our session. Our contact information is listed here. We'd be happy to answer questions offline. And again, thank you again to our role players and to the conference coordinators for having us. Thanks.
Thank you. That was awesome. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I want to encourage everyone before I do to check out the schedule for the rest of the wonderful presentations today, the 3rd day of our wonderful conference. And if you have any questions, please make sure you contact Pauline, Brad, or Andrea about this program, this coaching program. It is a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.